That's a funny story. Karma. So I had a client of mine the other day ask me how long it takes me to make a podcast from start to finish. And I said, well, you know what? Most of the time I'm thinking about ideas or thinking about how to expand on ideas that I've thought of. And I'm sitting there making notes in my phone 3-4 times a day with regards to any particular idea. And then the actual recording, and then a little bit of editing, not much. But he said, so you only take one shot and, one take. And I said, yeah, I haven't had to take any more than that. Well, today, first time recording since that conversation, I've had to take 3 takes. So, knock on wood, this is the final take. So this is Reflections, a Nick Ibarra podcast, and this is episode 5. And today we're going to have a little bit of fun. It is a serious conversation, but it's one that I think that we can have fun with in the sense that a lot of it's common sense. A lot of it is stuff that we haven't necessarily heard. I know I haven't heard somebody say it to me. It's just lessons I've thought of as time goes by with my experiences with people, with myself, and seeing how the world works. And it is how to become more financially successful in your life. And we know Dave Ramsey, we know Tony Robbins, we know, invest in your retirement, invest in a savings account, try not to go into unnecessary debt. And those are all things that are super common. I looked at their plans. I looked at a couple other guys' plans that are in the similar line of work as those two individuals are. And they're great. They're wonderful at what they do. They're highly successful because they've helped so many people. And I fully recognize that. But I think that there are a couple of things that they don't cover, and I think it's worth covering. And so there's 6 things that I have here that I want to talk about, and they are 6 things that are going to go in order of importance, with the 6th one being the least important in my mind anyway, and the first one being the most important. So number 6, the 6th way that you are going to become more financially successful, more economically successful, more financially independent is to limit alcohol and drugs. And that is a simple one, but yet so hard for so many. First of all, if you have an addiction issue, get help. I have struggled with alcohol in the past. I've been sober for 12 out of the last 13 years. I had a summer of fun that wasn't fun at all. Since I ended alcohol, I have seen my income quadruple, and the one summer that I did drink, it was a summer that my business stayed stagnant. And I won't say that it is because of alcohol, but I definitely think it played a big role in it. I think my alcohol that summer did play a big role in it, along with some personal issues that I let affect my professional life, but also those personal issues could have been not as severe if I wouldn't have been drinking that summer. All that being said, limit alcohol. I want to go out with some friends every couple weeks, once a month, that kind of thing. But if your sole purpose is to get through the day, to get your drinks on at night, play video games, or get to the weekend because the weekend's more important because there's alcohol and eating gummies or smoking bowls or whatever it is that you do, there's an issue with that. And I say that because weekend should be a time for recovery, not destroying your body. And again, I understand some people, you're going to go out, you're going to have fun once in a while, but it shouldn't be the purpose of every weekend, especially if you're not where you want to be financially. Now, when you get there, and if you can control it, you do what you want. I don't care. I don't care either way. But if you want to get somewhere different than where you are, you need to make sure that your drugs and alcohol are in check. Number 5, never be jobless. I would think this would go unsaid. However, I'm going to tell a story about an individual I knew. He had a master's degree in information technology. He was an IT guy. And he went quite some time, 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year without a job. And I would ask him regularly. I'd say, hey, man, you still not working? He's like, nah, man, I can't find any work. And I'm like, where are you looking? And he'd tell me, and I'd be like, well, what about like something in a different job field? Honestly, at that time I'd cut meat at an Indian restaurant after a bachelor's degree, after politics, after the war. I had stocked shelves at Walmart. I had been on my hands and knees in a freezer at Casey's. Why can't you do something different outside of your line of work long enough to find something in your line of work, because it's always easier to get a good job if you have a job while you're looking for that good job. And for some reason, it did not click with him that he was not above or any job was beneath him. First of all, it is going to be easier to get hired to a good job if you have a job than if you have to tell an employer, oh, I haven't worked in the past year because the jobs that were offered were beneath me. Get out of here with that. So always be working. And if for some reason you're not working for a period of time, your full-time job becomes sitting behind a computer submitting applications, and every couple of days following up with those applications, walking into the business and asking for an interview, that type of thing. Number 4, you have to play the game. You have to understand that there is no job out there that is going to be all rainbows and lollipops. There are things in my job. I love my job as a personal trainer / coach. I love my job, but there are things that I hate. You know what I hate about my job is when I get a potential client that from 10 minutes into the conversation or 10 hours into the messaging back and forth, I'm thinking this person's wasting my time. They are not going to buy a package. They are not going to come train with me. They just want to hem-haw around. And it's not because they mean any ill will. It's just that they're not ready to change their lives in the capacity that it takes to get healthy and be disciplined enough to exercise and eat right for an extended period of time, which is fine. But I can almost tell from the very outset who's serious and who's not. But I play the game, and here's why. There are people that my wife or friends have been like, dude, you've been talking to them for how long? For 2 weeks, for 2 months, and they haven't bought a package, they haven't invested in training? What are you doing? And I'm like, you never know who they know, and you never know when they're going to change their mind. And I will tell you, I cannot count on both hands and feet how many times people I thought were wasting my time. After 2 months of going back and forth, they became clients for years at a time. So slow in, slow out. I'm patient, even though I don't really like it, because more often than not, I'm not going to hear from that person inquiring again. But I play the game. You have to play the game. Sometimes you're going to have to shut your mouth when you don't want to. Sometimes you're going to have to speak up when you don't want to. Sometimes you're going to have to do duties when you don't want to. But you have to play the game, because every job involves politics. Putting on a smile when it isn't fun, and knocking that smirk off your face even when you want to smirk really big. Number 3, keep up with your health. There is research study after research study that says people who diet and exercise regularly miss 50% less work than people who do not. And most of the times these studies are done with obese versus non-obese individuals, but the fact remains is that you eat better, you exercise, and you take care of your body and mind, you're going to be a better employee who's going to miss less work. And in order to do what you want to do financially, and that is either climb the ladder at the company you're in or move to different companies to climb a ladder financially, you are going to need to have a sound mind and body. Number 2, find a skill or a craft that exceeds your worth in labor and time. And so what I mean by that is this. When I was in the workforce as an employee making an hourly wage, I was making $40,000, $45,000 a year on a good year, and that includes overtime. I found a skill, and that is nutrition and fitness. I found a skill, a craft, that exceeded my worth as a manual laborer, whether it's behind manual labor. When I say that, I mean whether you're in a warehouse or in an office setting, you're giving your labor, you're giving your time to somebody else for an amount of money per hour or per year, if your salary, whatever. If I have somebody come to me and say, hey, Nick, what do you charge me for a meal plan and a workout program? They don't say, how long will it take you and what do you charge per hour? They say, what do you charge me for A and B? What do you charge me for the specific product? It doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter if it takes me 20 minutes or 2 hours. I'm going to tell them the same cost. And that cost is based on a number of factors, but it's a flat fee. And as time has gone by, you asked me for a meal plan and a workout program. 5 years ago, that shit would have taken me a couple hours to do. These days, it doesn't take near that long, but I still charge the same price because you're paying me for my knowledge, you're paying me for my skill, and you're paying me for a product. You're not paying me for my time. So if you can find a skill and you can find a craft that you're passionate about that is based on the product you provide versus the time you give to providing something to somebody else, you are going to be leaps and bounds ahead of anybody who doesn't understand that concept. The number one thing that we can do to ensure financial success And you're going to say, Nick, you're telling me about this? And I'm going to say, yeah, I learned the hard way. But I'm trying to help you not learn the hard way if you haven't stumbled upon this obstacle. The number one way to ensure financial success is to get married one time and stay married. And I say that because, one, I've dealt with divorce, and two, I dealt with divorce as a paralegal 500 plus times. Here's the thing. You are married, and you have a retirement, and you have a house, and you have a savings account, you have various assets, and you get divorced, half of it goes away. And it doesn't matter what part you earned or what part your spouse earned, half of it goes away, generally speaking. Secondly, the second big hit in a divorce is, let's say you and your wife both make $100,000 a year. That's $200,000 a year income. You have this income jointly and you pay bills jointly. And when you separate, your utility bill is all on you. Your mortgage payment or rent, it's all on you. Your car payments, your gas, your food bill, all of that stuff is on you individually. And if you have kids, the cost of those kids, which is fine, I mean, they're your kids, you need to do that, but the cost of the children becomes solely yours when they're in your care. And if you're paying child support, that's another expense that would not have existed had you stayed in the same home. Now, I'm not saying if you're abused or if somebody cheats on you or if some unresolvable issue occurs, not to walk away. I'm not advocating for unhealthy relationships, but I am saying that there is a lot of value in picking the right person and picking them one time. And the other thing I want to address about divorce and how it affects your economic success and your financial security is the mental and emotional toll it takes. And I know that I have a lot of listeners that have been divorced, and so you can vouch for this. And if you've never been divorced, learn from our mistakes, right? I liken divorce to being worse than burying somebody that you love, being worse than death. When somebody passes away, it's final. There's a finality to it. There's nothing that can be changed. There's nothing that can be undone. There's nothing that can be fixed. We begin that healing process within a week, and that's if you start that healing process once the person is buried, once you see them in their final state of existence before they are buried, if it's an open casket. But there's a finality to it that the healing process begins immediately. When you get divorced, you have to deal with that person potentially for the rest of your life. And what I mean by that is, you go through the divorce process, and every time that person's name comes up, every time you get an email or a phone call from your attorney during that process, that wound reopens. And I don't care how over the person you are, it's still a wound and it still reopens, because even if it was a horrific nightmare that you're glad to be away from, there's still memories attached to that nightmare that invoke an emotional response, and that emotional response is negative. And if you had not had that hardship of that wound being reopened every time you open an email from your attorney, every time you had to do a parental exchange with your ex, with the kids, trading, swapping back and forth for your parenting time, all those things reopen the wound for a long period of time, and you're bothered by it. You go to work and you need to talk to it with your coworkers who you find close confidants, and you go home at night and you lose sleep over it. You're depressed. You don't eat right. All these things take energy that would have been so much better spent focusing on that savings account, that retirement account, building your assets, building your knowledge, building your education, finding that craft or that skill that exceeds your cost, your worth in labor. And so those 6 things, I think, are things that we don't hear, but we need to hear. And if we're people that are like, man, I got that shit down. Good. Have you shared it with somebody? Because we can change somebody else's life by sharing simple shit that we've learned that we may not be sharing with other people, whether it's our kids, whether it's our friends, whether it's people that we're just going through life with. Because the whole reason I'm behind this microphone and the whole reason I'm doing this is just to share my experience, share my thoughts. And if I change, I've talked about the primary purpose of this podcast is so that my kids can look back on it at some point in time and say, hey, that's my dad. That's how my dad thought. This is what my dad thought about finances. This is what my dad thought about being truthful. yes, it is about that, but it's also about sharing my experiences with you guys, with whoever's listening to this, in hopes that you'll glean something from it, and in hopes that in your experiences, you're able to share your life with somebody else in a way that changes their life. Again, this is Reflections, the Nick Ibarra podcast, and I'm your host, and I'm glad that you've joined me for this episode and all the other episodes you've joined me. If you like what you're seeing, hit the like button, subscribe, share with a friend, all the good stuff that everybody tells you to do. Till next time, you guys have a good day.